Hello and welcome to the Room to Talk podcast with me, Michael Dunn. This is the podcast where we talk to normal people from all walks of life in Salford. And today we're sitting down with someone who has a very intriguing background as a man who's come from much warmer and exotic climates to settle in the dreary industrial environment of Salford, working as a technical manager inside scientific firms around Manchester. Born in the 1950s in the northeast of India and given the name of a particularly famous figure in British history, I wonder if he has the stories to match. William Wallace, welcome.
Hi.
So, what was it that first attracted you to living in the UK?
Well, my dad's a Brit, and he was very proud Brit. And if you look, India was a colony of Britain, and people of British descent who were abroad were more British than the British themselves. They want a bit of Scotland, they'll transport it across to India, or to Ceylon, or to Malaysia. If they want a bit of Surrey, they'll do the same. Their clubs, they're all different things, which are what they had in this country. So they transported all of that across the empire, if you like.
So that's interesting. So, would you mind telling me a little bit more about your father then, as a Brit?
Right. My father was actually born in India. My grandfather came from London, Clapham, and he went there because he was an engineer in the public works department. And he married a lady called Phillips, and that's my granny, of course. And she was from Lahore. And again, she was, I think, Northern Irish and English ancestry. And so that was very fascinating for me. And my dad, when he was born, he had 4 other brothers. He was the youngest. And he went to schooling in India. As a matter of fact, the very same school I went to, because he made sure that I went to that school as well, which was up in the hills in North India. And my dad, after schooling, did several work, mainly working with Goodyear tires. I believe he went to Australia, came back, the war started, of course, the Second World War. And what they did was they got a lot of the senior managers, because they were so short of officers. So they got the senior managers of tea plantations, of businesses, to come and do the sort of logistic work. So my dad was made, right, you're Major Wallace now. You are on the transport corps, and your duty is to take food rations up to the front, because this is the time when the Japanese were coming right to the border of India. So that was his job. So he was demobbed as Lieutenant Colonel, went back into civilian life, met my mother, came up to Shillong, which is my hometown, met my mother, and it was quite fascinating the way they met. My mother played the guitar, and she gives lessons, and my dad happened, and this very place where she gives lessons, next door to it was my father's residence in Shillong. And he used to hear this guitar strumming, and my mother also used to sing. And he fell in love with the voice. And he used to come to the veranda. You had this like a porch veranda. And he used to say and wait for this lady to come out. And that's how they met. He introduced himself. And they say the rest is history.
Yeah. Do you have a little singing voice yourself? Or
No,
you inherited that?
Sadly not. I love music. I love listening to music. But in terms of actually playing, although funny enough, in my college days in India, I did play in a rock band, but very, very short. I was a drummer.
Right.
And that was it, really.
Well, you had a little bit of music in you.
I had a little. I enjoyed it thoroughly, but I love listening to music.
Yeah.
Jazz is something right now that I just love. I just sort of cloaks me, especially in these cold, wintry days that are coming. Listening to jazz, just
One of your
is
joys in
wonderful.
life.
Absolutely.
So, what was life like for you growing up in Shillong?
I think wonderful. I think I was very lucky. My sister, my eldest sister Sonia, and myself, we had a wonderful life. Both my parents were wonderful parents, very loving, very supportive, gave the best that they could within their means, gave us an education which we are deeply grateful for. In Shillong, luckily, we had fantastic schools and colleges. I was very lucky. I went to a very fine school there for some time, St. Edmunds. And then, of course, thereafter, my father sent me to the school that he went to, which was St. Joseph's in a place called Nainital. Tal actually means lake in Hindi. So this is a place about 6,500 feet above sea level, so quite high on the foothills of the Himalayas. And it was a fine school run by the Irish Christian Brothers. And I was there for 7 years as a boarder. Passed out and came back to Shillong and did my degree in science. And after that, then I came to the UK in '75, and I did further studies in London, specializing in polymer science and manufacturing. I did a BSc honors in that, and applied to a company here called British Writer. And they interviewed her. I came up, they interviewed me, and gave me a job. That was 1979.
So you've moved around quite a lot during your life. So I read in your notes that you'd moved from Geelong to Calcutta.
That's right, yes.
And was that a massive upheaval for you as a child?
No, very exciting. Very, very exciting, because Calcutta is a big city. It was, after all, the capital of British India until 1904. So it had these splendid buildings. It had all the wonderful paraphernalia. That is what the British left, the clubs, the this, the that. It was absolutely wonderful. The infrastructure was very good. The restaurants were fantastic. So yeah, life was very good, provided you had the money. I think I've got to differentiate that, there's a lot of poverty in India. Yes, there's extremes. So you have some, and so we would consider ourselves like middle class.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of poverty and there's a lot of very, very rich people.
And was there an awareness of that for you when you were younger about the poverty and the...
I think so, but it never really hit me, because I just thought I was in a normal thing. You had people who helped you out. We call them servants, which is when you say that word now, of course, it can be quite a derogatory word, but it was the done thing. And they still have them even now. People who cook, people who serve your food, people who wash your clothes. Because if they didn't do that and get us payment for what they did, poor people will have nothing. So yeah, that was the situation. So Calcutta was very, very interesting for me. I loved that city. And then from there, as I say, came to the UK in '75.
And was there any sort of culture shock for you there? Obviously, you had a British family, but a lot of years had passed between that time.
No shock at all. Absolutely not. I think my dad, although being a Brit, was very much into the Indian way of life. He didn't sort of stand aside, say, I'm British, I don't want to. No, he was. My mother's family loved him dearly, respected him, because he was always part of there. He was always, and he tried to learn the language. As a matter of fact, because he was in the army, his Urdu, which was the dominant language then, he was excellent in Urdu. So he spoke to everybody in that language. So they respected him for that. And the other thing of my dad was he was a very, very jolly sort of person, very effervescent. you know, gregarious, loved meeting people, very sociable. While my mother was the complete opposite, very quiet, didn't say very much. But they gel beautifully, as I say, opposites attract.
And would you say that both of their personalities reflect in yourself as well?
I think so, yes. I think I've got more of my mother in me than my dad. I think my sister's got more of my dad because she's, again, that very, you can know my sister's arrived because her peals of laughter just lights up the place, you know.
I'd say you're a very personable man as well. Do you feel like it's something that you can switch on and off?
Yes and no. I think it's hard to say, really. Your personality is something which is you, which makes you unique individual. Yes, I'm happy to get a bit of what my father's wonderful sort of things of life, where he doesn't take things too seriously. And my mother's perspective of life is where it's more calm, more even, stand back and observe the world. So I have both. There are times when I enjoy being on my own, for example. I think I've highlighted that. I'm gregarious, yes. I love going out with the people to the pubs, to this. But I also find that I have quality time on my own, provided I know my wife Anne is in the house somewhere, whether she's upstairs in the sewing room, I'm downstairs either painting, because I love painting. I love listening to music, or I love reading. I'll read a lot of technical files. I go into forums that discuss scientific things. I enjoy all that. And I can spend times on my own, just absorbing all that.
I think I'm very similar to you, Bill, actually. I like doing that sort of thing myself, yeah. So what was your first port of call, aside from education, when you did move over here? Was it always a permanent move for you?
Not necessarily, no. I came here, as I said, in 1975, and I was in London, where I was in the North London Polytechnic, because that's the only place that had this thing that did the polymer science and technology. And the reason I did that is because my dad had a company there in India that made all this stuff, you know, so he wanted me to get the technical know-how and then come back. But he was the personality and the driving force behind the company there. So when I came here in 75, 76, cancer got him whacked. And I got a phone call. And then, of course, I had no money because I was still a student. Come back quickly. Your father's very ill. Blah. But luckily, a lady helped me out, who was an Indian lady. She helped me out. We've got your ticket. Just go. So I dashed back to India, landed at Calcutta Airport, took a taxi, just dashed to the flat where we lived in central Calcutta. My cousin came downstairs and warned me and said, "Look, your dad you're going to be very shocked. Just prepare yourself." And when I went up and my mum was there, I hugged her, walked into the bedroom. There he was. I just didn't recognize him. The strapping, solid-built person I loved, I respected, lying there, eyes closed, grey hair, thin. The cancer had just ravaged him. Pancreatic cancer it was. And I went to him, kissed him on his forehead, and shouted into his ears, "Dad, this is Bill. William." He always called me William. I didn't say Bill. I said, "William. William, this is William. I'm home. Don't worry, Dad." And he had this on his forehead, this knotting, as if he was holding on to something, not letting go. That line that connects between life and death, but he's holding on to it.
And he knew you were there.
And then, as soon as I said, "William, I'm here, Dad, don't worry. Don't worry." That knot that was in his forehead slowly disappeared. And then I went, refreshed myself, had a cup of tea, was sitting in the dining room, and they all rushed, come, come. Your dad is just about to go. He was just waiting for me.
Yeah.
He was just waiting for me. Poor fellow. 3-4 days. The doctor said he should have gone about 4 or 5 days ago. But he was just waiting. The tremendous bond between father and son, the bond between father and daughter, or mother and son, it was fantastic.
Do you think that was a major turning point in your life then?
Not really. My dad wanted me to do what I did, but as I said, the business was him. He was the driving force, the personality. I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about accounts. I didn't know anything. I was still learning the technical side of things here. My dear sister Sonia tried her best to, but it just so that business faded away. So I remained in the UK. So I thought, okay, let me get some experience. Let me, it's okay learning your stuff in academia and college and university. You've got to get out to the big wide world, go into business. And so I saw this advert at the Polytechnic where I was, a company called British Fighter, and they were based in Middleton, Manchester. So I applied, I got an interview, and they gave me a job. And that's how I came to the North, which was quite an experience for me, very different from, the South. The accent, I couldn't understand what people were saying. It took me a long time, all the colloquial terms.
Was there an environmental difference for you as well?
An environmental difference, yeah. Yeah, you're coming into an industrial, because as the train pulled into Stockport, this was 1978 or 79, and you saw these chimneys then, huge chimneys, which were the signs of the industrial Manchester, And I'd never seen anything like that. Of course, those have disappeared now. And I thought, crikey, where have I come to? But you learn to, over the years, my first 4 or 5 years, I don't know how I stuck it out, to be honest. I really do not know how I stuck it out, because I was alone. And I used to watch a lot of people walking around with their loved ones, with their girlfriends or wives. And I think how wonderful. And I used to feel, my God, this is so lonely. And then I was transferred from Middleton into Salford, because White had a factory there. And that's when I met Anne, my wife, my future wife then, of course.
Did everything change for you in that moment then?
Not at that moment. It was one of those very slow burn things.
So there was no love at first sight then?
No, it wasn't anything like that, sad to say. And sometimes these slow burn things are wonderful, believe me. And I was sitting in reception, and she was the PA to the director. And my first sight was her when she came up and said, Mr. Wallace, Mr. Atkinson will see you now. So I said, okay, thank you very much. I thought, yeah, she's nice. Well, then again, a lot of other people were very nice. So we had the interview, and I got that position, which was a more senior position as a technologist. And I had a very interesting work to do there, which was very unique. We've heard a lot of PPEs recently with the COVID crisis, personal protective equipment. And that particular division, Vitacell, made PPEs, but not of the type like masks, nothing like that. They made life jackets, things that kept you alive if you fall into the ocean, if you fall into a lake, whether you're rowing or kayaking or you're in a big ship. And so my job was to design these foams that go into these life jackets. And the other part was also foams for impact protection for equestrian horse riders. So that when a horse kicks you off, you fall off a horse, then at least this, so that was the foam also I developed that, and sold worldwide. And also it was used in bulletproof jackets as a trauma foam. And the other thing that we did, which was quite successful, was also aircraft, supplying Airbus and Boeing with flame retardant foam, which made your seat buoyant. So if a plane, heaven forbid, ever alighted on water, then all you do is just take the cushion of the seat and put it against your chest and you'll be afloat.
So you heavily involved in the creative processes of these?
I was head of design. So my brief was make the new products. So I had carte blanche, sort of from the guys at the top. I went to Europe, of course, many a times for business to check out exhibitions, to talk to academics. I was heavily involved with Cambridge University as well, because there was a professor there who did a lot of testing of the stuff that we made. So yeah, very fruitful, very interesting work.
So in general, you are an unsung hero to the world, really, with your equipment's been sold worldwide and the safety measures.
Well, I don't know about that. That sounds a bit... but yeah, in my little way, if I've improved humanity in any small way, yeah,
I think you've been very self-effacing, yeah.
Well, I don't. Yeah, well, yeah. I think that a lot of other people have done a lot more. A lot of people never heard of. So.
And there's a lot of people who've never had anywhere near the impact that you've had on the world either. Was there any point where you felt like this became a vocation of yours, or was this something that you felt that you wanted to continue with as a brief, or was a job to you at the end of the day?
Yes, a job was a job, but at the end of the day, you've got to enjoy it. You've got to have passion. I think that's the word that is missing a lot of. You see people going to work, it's like a zombie going, and it's a mundane thing. You've got to have passion. And one of the great things for me is when you worked in the lab, you've done the small bit. The big step is from the lab to production, when that small thing has to work on a big run. That is the magic step. And I used to be in the factory late at night because it was only nighttime when they weren't producing much that I could use the production equipment. So we used to run, and the elation one gets when something's successful. But it's not always successful. Many times you had failures, but you had to dust yourself and get up, try it again. It's like anything.
Do you ever find yourself with any sort of modern technology or things that you come across that you feel like could have been made better? Do you ever have those design impulses in your mind?
Oh, not now really, because what I see now is so fantastic. One of the things that sort of perks me and gets my interest going is like renewable energy. I just love all that. When you see, I mean, what got me was the fact that somebody mentioned that 6 hours of sunshine that shines on our planet, 6 hours. If we could capture that and harness that 6 hours of sunshine, that could give the energy for everybody. That's 7.5 billion of us, for whatever we do, for a whole year. And I thought, wow, really? But we haven't got that technology yet to capture that, to harness it.
So how do you find yourself relaxing now then?
Yeah, as I said, music, painting, reading. I love all that. I love going out, but of course now with restrictions, we can't do very much going out. But I've traveled a bit abroad, as I say. Singapore is a place where I enjoyed a lot. I thought, oh, what a lovely place to go. Anne and myself went there. Very clean, very ordered. But again, beautiful buildings, right from the time of the British there. And again, contrast with the modern stuff, which was very interesting.
Does the British Empire sort of sit in your mind quite a lot.
It does. It does.
I know. What are your feelings about the empire in general?
My feeling initially was that it was a fantastic thing. It was a wonderful thing. I was looking through it through rose-tinted glasses. My dad was a Brit. I worshipped him. Anything that, and anytime England played, whether it's cricket, football, it's got to be that. England must win. But as you read more and more and see from the other side, in India, for example, which we don't get to read a lot of, is the cruelty that happened. I mean, India was a very, very rich country before the British came. And as a matter of fact, I think it was 26% of the world's wealth was in India from whatever they did then, whatever they made then, which was quite simple but beautiful. Your textiles, your silks and things like that, your spices. When the British left, it had gone down to 4%. So you can't view that as a success. But they were the rulers, they were the masters. So yes, it's very important we have a balanced conversation regarding all these things. And to my dear British friends, this is what I tell them. Some of them look at me quite taken aback, but I said, look, you've got to look at it from both sides. One country I do admire is Germany. I'll tell you what, the Second World War, the Nazis decimated Europe. They killed so many people, the Jews, the Gypsies, anybody who's not of millions. But yet, the Germans now were told all about it. It was like a cathartic experience for them. Purge it out. They were very honest about it. That's why I never say, when I talk to a German, that Germans are bad. They're not. It's the Nazis who are bad. Just you have to remember that.
I do think that's an important thing to distinguish as well between bad and good, and I do think there is a lot of lessons there.
Yeah.
And particularly in Germany's case, where they have owned up to what they've done and they've rebuilt better.
Yeah.
And you could see that being a real thing for Britain in particular, that they could follow a lead of in terms of being able to build on their past and being comfortable with what's happened, being able to build better in the future.
Yeah.
But from you, Bill, I've always been able to take a bit of information whenever I've met you and learn a little bit from you. And I remember you talking to my daughter on a little job that we're doing not so long ago. Is it something in you that is a bit of a teacher, would you say?
Well, that surprised me myself, because we had, we run this, I'm a volunteer in an allotment, which I love dearly. It's someplace I thought, volunteering in an allotment, who wants to do that? But when I did it, I loved it. My wife answered, do come, you'll meet new people. And I have, and I met a wonderful lot, Tommy, Leslie, Jackie, and Ray, and all the others, Dave, and wonderful people, ordinary folks. We had the kids last year from the primary school, which is next door here. And they came along, and it just came out. Me talking about everything. I said, hang on, where's this all coming? But I'm interested in science. Photosynthesis. You had to explain to them what light, what color. Why is everything green? Everybody looks at me surprised. Why is everything green? Why are the plants green? Why are they not blue? It's because blue is the color, indigo and violet, is the color the plants use to make energy, to make sugars. And green is the color which is rejected. That's why it's reflected back. And that's why we see it. And I thought that's fascinating. And you could see the children also looking quite fascinated.
Taking it all in.
Yeah. It was different for them, and I hope they enjoyed it.
And was it something that gave energy to you then? Being
Oh,
around children?
absolutely. I was on a high really because I could see the faces of the kids looking at me and the teachers were looking at, wondering what's going on. Because so yeah, that's something that's great. I'm looking forward to it now. It sort of gets me going.
So, thinking back in terms of your somewhat middle class background in India and being able to get such a great education, do you think it's education that could take this country forward in terms of like being able to really harness young people over in our country? Is there something that you feel passionate about in terms of education of young people?
I think education is important, but we all not built similarly. We've got different talents, and I'd love it if we able to get youngsters and say, look, okay, you're not academic. Why impose all these things like algebra and mathematics and physics and chemistry when certain people just just flies over their heads? But they're good with something else. They're good with their hands, and we need people like that. The plumbers, the electricians, all these sorts of people. It's a whole spectrum of them. It's important we identify these people early on. I think in the schooling. I don't know if that's going to be done like an academy where they teach like bricklaying. They teach. I'm sure they're doing that already, but perhaps at a younger age, identify them so that people don't feel left out. A lot of people feel when they see people doing well who in chemistry or physics or mathematics. Some people are very good at that, but some people are not. I wasn't very good at it. I was sort of medium, sort of. But some people are brilliant. But people who are not brilliant, it's really, really tough on them. And I wonder how it affects them psychologically.
Do you think that can have a large impact on people's lives and their
I think
social
so.
standing?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. Because we speaking from my experience, we had a very strict brother called Brother Hughes. I mean, he was more than strict, actually. I don't know. To me, he was a bit of a bully. And he was very quick to anger. His temper was something else. So there was total fear of all the boys to attending maths classes, because if you got anything wrong, in those days, capital punishment was nothing. It was done. He would come and just whack you. And so
So there are different ways that people learn, and people learn things differently, and have very different skills to other people as well.
Yeah,
and different things to offer.
We are all individuals in this planet. We are all different. Yes, I know birds of a feather flock together. So you'll have people who have this particular talent will go in there, whether you're a particle physicist or whether you're an astronomer, whether you're an athlete, whether you're a whatever, But we need all those people. We do. We just can't be this type of this, or we can't be this type. It has to be the full spectrum, and we have to respect that, nurture that, build it up. Even the lowest, the cleaning, the streets, the street cleaners, where would we be without them? I respect those people so much. They get up at 4 o'clock in the morning, get our streets clean. I salute those guys. NHS workers, yes, we've clapped them, but they're alone when they come out of the hospital to go back home late at night or get up early in the morning, walking to Salford Royal or walking Manchester or whatever hospital they go to, trudging along, cold morning, shivering, but yet they go, they work. God, I salute those people.
Passion is the key.
Absolutely.
Bill, thank you very much for sitting with us today.
Not at all.
Learned a lot.
Been a pleasure.
And hope you can come and sit down with us again and have another chat soon.
Well, if you invite me, I certainly will come.
Lovely stuff. Thank you very much, Bill.
Thank you, Mike.
See you now.
All the best.